One thing Fluid Engine is really good at is overlapping elements and creating a very collage-y design. And one question that I see a lot is, how can I make it look like something in one section is overlapping the section beneath it? And what is the code? Because there used to have to be code for that in the early versions with Classic Editor with 7.1 and its predecessor on 7.0. But you actually don't need code anymore to create the same effect in Fluid Engine, and I'm going to show you how to do that. It's not actually a trick statement, but it is considered a Squarespace hack. You just have to get a little bit creative. But before we dive in, if we haven't met, my name is Caitlin. I run Launch the Damn Thing. I am a web designer and Squarespace educator, and I love teaching the tools that I use to run my own business as a one-woman show. And I think they can apply to you too. On that note, let's take a deep dive in because it is a very short tutorial and I know you're going to be excited about that. So let's take a look. I'm actually going to use a client site to show you that you don't need code anymore in something that's already established, and I'm sure she won't mind the promotion. We're actually going to go into her About page, which is a great example of this strategy or this hack. This is the live site, and you can see that line, that section line in the background is kind of moving just a little bit with the scroll speed. And that is because I've designed a background graphic in Canva. So if we go and edit background, you can see most of the background is the brand peach color, but the bottom is her branded off-white color. And I've moved the focal point down to the bottom center so that I can force the section to focus and crop down to the bottom half of this graphic. So if I wanted the background to be only peach, I can move the focal point further up, but I actually want that line to show here. I've also applied an image effect so that I can get that parallax that we loved so much in 7.0. I've turned that on, customized the sliders just a little bit. Then on top of that, I have an image block. I've applied the shadow to this image in a Canva design. So when I brought it in, that is actually a transparent shadow that I applied in Canva. So again, not with code or with SquareKicker. I have brought that image down to the bottom of the section. So you can see the image boundary of this element is touching the bottom of the section boundary. In order to do that, we go into the format settings for the section and we turn off the fill screen option. The fill screen option will give you additional space on the top and the bottom of the section to fill the screen with either small, medium, or large padding and align the content inside the editable area. But we actually don't want any padding on the section here. So we're going to turn that off, and that allows us to put any element right up against the bottom of the section. If I move the image down to the bottom and I have the focal point down here, that actually makes it look like, even though it's not, the image is overlapping the peach color of the background. So it looks like it's overlapping into this section, but as you can see, when I am in edit mode, that is not actually the case. That is a good example of a alternative option that you can do with no code that makes it look like it's overlapping and apply sort of an animated effect to the background there. On this sample page, we have a blank section with an image that spans the full width of the section. So we've just dragged that image all the way to the edge until it snaps to the edge of the screen. Same thing on the right side. And we've drug it all the way to the top. We've adjusted the section settings to turn off that fill screen option again for this instance. Then we have an image block or a PNG, but that's another graphic we've created in Canva with applied shadows inside the Canva design. It's laying on top of the solid color background, and it's also laying on top of the image background. And this can make it look like the image is overlapping a background section and into the following section. So that's another instance where that works in a really similar way, but this is not actually a background image. It's just an image inside the section. And if you go into the background settings, you can see there's no image. Since we have the image overlay option now, When we have an image in here, we can go to Design and turn on the overlay, choose a color, and adjust the opacity of the color overlaying the image in order to do an effect like this without having to create the background graphic in Canva like we did in the other page. Now we could add a new blank section, and if I add a shape block here, I could extend that the full width of the section, drag it up so that it touches the image, and move this to the front. Then if we change the color theme of this section beneath it, we can make it look like this image is overlapping this section in a different way, right? So you can use a combination of image blocks, shape blocks, and section colors to achieve an overlapped look without it actually overlapping the section. And it can get really creative that way. This is not something that we could have ever done in Classic Editor, so it's a really fun thing to play with, especially now that we have options on actually changing colors. If we wanted to make this white, for example, and use the white color theme, when we save this page layout, you can see it does very much look like it's overlapping the next section, even though it's not. If we're using the same sandbox space that we were before, then we've created a very basic section underneath. What if we actually wanted this to look like it's overlapping on top of the image up here? So if we drag up on those extra rows and get rid of that space, we have a couple of options here. We could just copy this and paste it into this section because Fluid Engine lets you do that now. And if we were to make this background color match, we'd have to adjust the color in our text box. We've just edited the text. Now we don't really need this one anymore, so we could get rid of that. We could select everything in here and just kind of move it up a bit. Okay. Now we could drag this on top, and now we have that logo kind of sitting on top of the image here. And that has the effect that we want. If you wanted to do this, technically speaking, with code, but without actually writing it, there is another option. If we back up until we get that logo back in that bottom section, we'll get rid of it here. You could use something like SquareKicker, which is one of my favorite tools to put on 7.1 websites. If you have SquareKicker installed on your 7.1 website, you'll see that little logo appended to the menu or the settings for every element you add to the page. If you click that, you have a SquareKicker menu of options that basically writes all this code for you. You just choose the options from their menu, which I think is the coolest thing. If you click on position, you can choose to drag it up and it will overlap the section on top of the one that it's actually in. It writes the code for you that actually forces the image to overlap the section before it. And you're actually not limited to just what you can do on the slider. So if it's as far as it seems like you can take it, if you go into the position and you drag it off, you can increase this number. And you can see it will do that for you. Click apply and it will save your changes to your SquareKicker website updates. It wrote the code for me. It keeps track of the code for me. It keeps it updated for me. And if I were to save that page, I now have forever and always that logo resting over the border between both of those sections with code, but without having written it yourself. That's the last option. So you now have 3 more or less different ways to do this yourself without actually writing any code yourself. So that's my short hack for the day. I hope that helps you get creative. If you've loved today's tip, please leave a comment below and make sure you like and subscribe to keep supporting my channel so that I can keep creating awesome content for you. And if you have an idea for a future tutorial, make sure you also leave a comment for that. I do love getting your feedback. and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Until next time.